Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. It is Thursday, October 23rd, and we are one day away from ACC football as Friday night once again takes center stage for the league with Cal Virginia Tech. I'm Billy Embody. We're going to preview that and so much more on this edition of the show. Thanks for joining us on your Thursday. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying the show, enjoying the content. A little guest light this morning. I wanted to run through a bunch of games. I wanted to kind of share my take on where things are heading into week 9 of this league, one that has a few teams battling for bowl eligibility already and kind of trying to get to that threshold heading into this weekend slate of games, including Cal. Cal sitting at 5-2, Louisville 5-1, Miami 5-1, Pitt 5-2, SMU 5-2. So good group right there chasing that threshold of sorts heading into this weekend. So excited to have you with us. We'll have Conor O'Neill of On3SportsAndRivals.com joining us at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time, 7:45 a.m. Central for those of you. And we'll break down SMU Wake Forest. Might ask him a little bit about Duke basketball as well. The Duke Blue Devils had a little exhibition Wednesday night, or actually Tuesday night, because that one went late into the night, and he said he wanted to catch up on some sleep. So that's why we're doing Thursday. We kid. We're not that bad off, but excited to have you guys with us. You ever feel like you've lived an entire life sometimes when you have kids and all of that before 7 a.m., before 6 a.m. maybe? That was us this morning. Our son ran into the side of a door. He's off and running this morning, had 2 cups of coffee already. So it is just one of those days. And that's what happens when you've got a men's league hockey game that runs until 12:05 a.m. this morning. So off and running we go. ACC football. Do want to inform you guys, we have a new partner of the show that we are debuting today. So excited for this one as we have partnered with our friends at Horn Legend. Some of you guys might be familiar with what they're putting together over there. Really excited to share this group with you guys. Polos, pullovers, vests, sports shirts. So like your button downs, they've got all of that. And they've got it for your favorite college team. So ACC well represented at hornlegend.com. And the great thing is they are only adding to this slate. Go to that ACC slate. Look at that group. They already have a bunch of the ACC. They're going to have more. You see the ones that are kind of blacked out there or grayed out, not really available yet. But for you Seminole fans, you guys got to look good at least away from the field this year. So check out their pullovers. Great stuff there. SMU's collection is off and running in a really, really positive way. Boston College. And they do some really cool collabs. I know with SMU, they partner with Children's Health. So doing some cool things there. Those Clemson fans as well. It's the bye week. Great time to get some new polos, but really pullovers for this time of year. They've got the hoodies. So really pumped up about Horn Legend. So go to hornlegend.com and check out their selection there. They've got some great stuff. And if you click the link that is in our actual podcast episode description or YouTube channel, that helps us out. So check out Horn Legend and what they're doing over there. Week 9, we will talk SMU Wake Forest at the end of the episode in that 8:45 a.m. Eastern time slot. Right now, I do want to jump into Cal at Virginia Tech, a really intriguing game in Blacksburg for Friday night, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Virginia Tech, obviously, in the midst of a coaching search. If you haven't checked out our last episode on Wednesday, we kind of closed the show with some thoughts on Virginia Tech and where they stand, maybe who would fit really well at that job. I don't know, James Franklin. And where they're at with their coaching search. And make sure you hit subscribe to our channel if you're watching us on All Access AM YouTube or catching us on the podcast. We appreciate all of you guys who have done that. Just hit the 100 subscriber mark. I know that sounds small, but we've had a bunch of really good feedback so far and pumped up that you guys are with us and joining us in this world that we're going into, which is growing this thing from the ground up. Cal, one of the most intriguing stories of the college football season for me is always watching what quarterbacks are emerging and which ones are going to be the stars of the future. And Jaron Kiwa, and I always butcher that piece of it, but Sagan Patelli, really, really talented, former 5-star prospect, technically a transfer, comes to Cal and really kind of lit it up right off the bat. And sitting there with almost 1,700 yards passing on the year. TD to INT ratio has kind of caught up to him a little bit. It's been a mixed bag for him, but Cal's managed this season pretty well with him. They've been able to, have him complete 60% of his balls in conference play, which is a really good thing. They get an opportunity here to go west to east. I am really intrigued about this game and how this plays out, because this is a spread that, at least, looking on ESPN, minus 4.5 for Virginia Tech. That is a lot when you're a 2-5 football team. But I also kind of like it. I like that Virginia Tech is getting those points. I like that ESPN and some of the other points and odds makers are recognizing how difficult it has been to go west to east. More on that later when we talk about Miami hosting Stanford. That line is huge for that one as the Hurricanes look to get back to the right side of things. But I still am not going to sleep on Cal in this game and keeping it close. They've been involved in quite the game, last week, beating North Carolina just basically because North Carolina couldn't hold on to the football, went full, just getting rid of it right in the end zone, and that sunk their ship. But Cal does have that steady hand at quarterback. I don't really think Virginia Tech has that right now. They're out of sorts. There is always the thought that, of course, the interim coaches, Philip Montgomery, and interim coaches around the country can get things going, but this one doesn't scream that way to me. We're going to dish out picks this entire episode for you guys. Again, Virginia Tech minus 4.5. The over, or the total, is set 50.5 points, 50.5 points there. So I am of the opinion this one's going to be a little bit more lower scoring. Weather, 48 degrees expected for this one, so a little chilly as well in Blacksburg Lane Stadium, getting going there. I would say Cal in a squeaker, 21-18, something like that. Very competitive game, kind of a fun but sleepy kind of game for both teams. Cal coming from west to east. Now, I'm sure I'll eat my words on this, and Virginia Tech will make me look bad, but I do think Cal has at least figured out kind of the basics as far as being able to find ways to win and find ways to get on the right side of games. They've just been able to do that. I think last week is a great example, but they haven't hit their stride as far as winning big games and really, obviously, finding ways to be at a high level. They're doing what is needed for Justin Wilcox to stick around, to see the light, that there is something positive going on with this program. I expect them to get to bowl eligibility. If you look at who they've beaten, they were able to take care of business against Oregon State to open the season. Not a great accomplishment by any means, but a former power conference football program there. And then Minnesota, which just took down Nebraska. So a good win there at home, albeit, again, that east to west is also really difficult to do. And then their only other win of note, Boston College and North Carolina, two of the bottom feeders in the ACC. And they've already done the west to east trip by beating BC at BC. But again, it was a close one. So I think more of the same. I think Cal 21-18 in this one to kick off this Friday night for you guys on the college football slate. And we will also be tracking some other games on this Friday night as well, which is going to be a lot of fun and getting ready for Saturday. It's really, this ACC showcase that has really come together nicely for the league to kick off, the overall weekend. So excited about that because it just seems right that the ACC has really staked a claim at this Friday night, as well as, the American. We've got an affinity for the American, covered a lot of American football games. North Texas has a Charlotte. That should be a get-right game for North Texas. But back to the ACC. Saturday kicks off bright and early with Syracuse at Georgia Tech. We talked about this one with Chad Bishop earlier this week, earlier this week, and maybe that was last week we had Chad on the show. But he was talking about obviously how Brent Key, this Georgia Tech team, certainly is looking to get him extended, get him on the right side of things contract-wise. Wes Durham joined us yesterday, talked a lot about this game meaning a ton for Georgia Tech after last year's win by Syracuse. This spread, minus 16.5 for Georgia Tech, that's huge. I don't care how bad Syracuse has been offensively. I think this one could be a little bit closer, kind of like an ugly game after an emotional win by Georgia Tech over Duke last week. You maybe see this win for Georgia Tech kind of hang over, like the emotional impact of that win up in Durham. Total 52.5 on this one. That I'm not really worried about. I wouldn't touch that over that total points there at 52.5. But the spread minus 16.5 Georgia Tech. I don't know. It seems like this could be one of the bullets in the chamber for Fran Brown to be competitive in games. And Syracuse is having a really rough go of doing that this season because, losing Steve Angeli is such a big loss for them. They've lost 3 straight games, Duke, SMU, Pitt, and just haven't been on the right side of that at all since you saw Steve Angeli go down. I think we'll see maybe 2 quarterbacks as well in this one. Finally, maybe Luke Carney really gives it a full go. Fran Brown was non-committal when asked about Ricky Collins in a sense. So this is kind of the one of the games that, as far as getting up for it, you're on the road. It's 11 a.m. Backs against the wall. ESPN is broadcasting. It just seems like Fran Brown is going to have something ready for Georgia Tech to me. At the same time, Georgia Tech, this one means a lot for them. The question is, can they play with passion, not necessarily emotion? And good morning, Kenny. We appreciate you chiming in on the chat with us this morning. Thanks for joining us bright and early, and we'll keep this rolling Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, live on this channel. I go Syracuse to cover ever so slightly. Don't feel great about it. Wouldn't maybe put money on it if I was betting, but I would say that this is one of those games for Syracuse that, looking at the rest of their schedule, they've got to spend one on this game because Notre Dame, Miami, they loom ahead on the schedule. Those are games that I don't think talent-wise Syracuse is going to be able to overcome what they are missing with Steve Angeli out for the year. Georgia Tech style to me, and kind of that ground and pound throwback style, could be good enough for Syracuse to cover this game. That's always something that I try to pay attention to as best I can when it comes to some of these is the styles. Like we'll talk about in a moment, Stanford at Miami, 29.5 points over there. The style of Georgia Tech, maybe this game shortening. I know Syracuse kind of doesn't have anything at quarterback right now. Funny enough, Steve Angeli, still 1,317 yards, was really kind of among the top passers in the ACC still, and he's been out for 3 weeks. So you just really feel for him. But Syracuse, I don't think they win this one. I don't think that happens, but I do think they cover ever so slightly in this one, just kind of finding a way. And maybe it is a little bit lower scoring, and maybe it is a little uglier as well for those of you paying attention to that total. Virginia heads to North Carolina. This one, on the other hand, 10.5 points on the road for UVA. All UVA has done this year has been in absolute dogfights, and that is what I kind of expect to continue here. You look at UVA and what they've done, obviously beating Coastal, beating William and Mary. Those are those blowout type of performances. Other than that, Stanford, they were able to get a win at home. Again, west to east, big road trip there. but they lost at NC State earlier this year. Now they're coming off 3 straight hard-fought, full 60-minute or more football games, and it's going to be something that catches up with you eventually. That type of emotion, that type of effort, that type of intensity. You go on the road, noon kickoff over there in Chapel Hill, playing Bill Belichick. They're pissed. They're coming off of a road loss that they really should have had across the country. Don't sleep on this one where UVA makes this one interesting again. Maybe UNC's defense is kind of figuring things out. Maybe, just maybe. We'll see. This is going to be a good challenge here for Bill Belichick's defense. Tony Elliott, obviously one of the brighter offensive minds as a whole in college football with his past. I would be really cautious of 10.5 full points. The last 3 games for UVA have been won in overtime against Florida State, overtime against Louisville, and by 2 thanks to a safety in the waning seconds against Louisville. Now they go back on the road against UNC, and I am not high on Bill Belichick and what he's doing at UNC. I don't think it's going to work long term. I don't know if this is his last year. That's a discussion for another day. But I do think they can play this one tough enough to keep this competitive throughout and make UVA sweat it for another straight game. Go up over to Wake Forest hosting SMU. We'll break this one down with Conor O'Neill, but I am going to give my game pick here on this as well. This is an intriguing one for me. I think this is a little bit sleepier. I think for me, this is going to be probably in that, 20, 27 point, game, as far as SMU's offense goes. I just am not high on Wake Forest's offense. SMU favored by 3.5. I do think they cover. SMU has not been good covering on the road. This would be a catastrophic loss for SMU. The line here suggests, it would be SMU minus 6.5 if they're at home, but they're not. They're on the road. So 3 points goes to Wake on this front. If SMU is a touchdown better at home in this one, they probably cover. I think SMU has shown with their win at Clemson that maybe some of their road big game, issues are behind them. Now they can take their 20-game conference winning streak, 11 straight in ACC play in regular season on the road. They're confident. They're starting to hit their stride. This is obviously trap game. It was trap game when the schedule came out. Somebody at ontheponyexpress.com mentioned this has been talked about so much as a trap game. Is it a trap game? That is a fair point. But SMU still has to go play a Wake team that has been pesky against many teams this year. But also at the same time, open the season and you were like, oh no, this is the Jake Dickert era, having a 10-9 win over Kennesaw State to kick things off. They didn't even look that impressive beating Western Carolina either. But then they go on and lose back-to-back against NC State and Georgia Tech. Now they've kind of gotten right against Virginia Tech and Oregon State. I mean, color me skeptical just a little bit that they're able to make this one a really close ball game. If SMU is not sleepwalking, if SMU is not really having to manage Kevin Jennings and do some things, obviously just to win, but if they can come out and run their offense, do what they normally do, I think we're going to see this one go SMU's way and a safe cover for the Mustangs on the road. Again, they've not been good against the spread this year by any means. They are really in a spot where hosting Miami next week is probably on the mind of a lot of people. It can't be on the mind of this team. They can't let it affect their play because right when they thrust themselves back into the ACC Conference Championship race, they've got a difficult game to navigate from an emotions perspective. So give me SMU to cover though in that one. I think this team is showing their maturity a little bit. I think Wake Forest is going to play hard, but I believe SMU is going to show their maturity in that one and get the cover. NC State at Pitt, 2:30 p.m. ACC Network game, Central Time, that is 2:30. Pitt -6.5. I love the Panthers in this one. 55 degrees over there in Pitt. Beautiful, beautiful weather up there for this one. I like Mason Heinchel, what he's doing. NC State still kind of in that just uh, just whatever. I mean, that's kind of what NC State football is. It's just kind of whatever. They don't invest. They don't really take care of their team as much as they probably should, as far as, taking care of the football side of things. Basketball with friend of the program, Will Wade, is off to a rolling start as far as, acquiring talent for his first year. But this program has kind of been a little stale, and I would not be surprised if this one kind of got ugly. -6.5 Pitt. They're at home. The line suggests it would be a little bit more close on a neutral site. I don't see that. I like CJ Bailey. I think with more help around him, he would be a better quarterback. 14-7 touchdown to INT ratio for him this season. But Pitt, Mason Heinchel, I think they've found something. Desmond Reed expected to play, I believe, in this one. So that's always good when you have that explosive of a runner in your backfield, and he is fantastic as a whole. And I think he's going to be able to help Mason Heinchel have a huge day. This is the real coming out party for him. And Jakarian Turner and Julia's Goff have really helped that Panther run game as well. This one could be. I've got this one on the ugly alert. This is just my opinion. NC State, I'm just not high on going up to Pitt and one, covering, but two, coming out with a win. It seems really difficult to me. Give me Pitt to cover. That's -6.5. The total 56.5 points there. Again, beautiful, beautiful little day in Pittsburgh. Stanford at Miami. This is one I'll spend a minute on. Carson Beck, his 4 interceptions. Huge deal in last week's game against Louisville. Obviously, that cost them. That sunk their ship. That was a game that you just got to have if you're Miami. You've just got to have it, and you don't get that from your star quarterback that you invested a lot of money in to bring in the offseason, and instead you fall flat on your face. Carson Beck will get right in this game. I think he plays clean. I think this is a game that against Stanford, Miami should not have to do too much to win and win at a high level. But -29.5 points, with the total being 44.5, 80 degrees, humid, cloudy. Maybe it rains down there. It seems like it rains all the time at Hard Rock these days. Give me Stanford to cover. Like, I could see this game being a 34-10 type of game. 24 points, Miami wins. Very, very safe. Very safe, option there for those of you looking to cover this one. Stanford's ground and pound style. They're going to try to take the air out of the football a little bit. Ben Gulbranson, I know he got banged up a little bit last week in that win against Florida State, but was still able to, help lead that team to a win. I like Stanford to cover here, and there's nothing wrong with Miami if they don't cover this game. There really, really is no way to feel bad about this, as long as it is that double digit, strong spread. But I just don't see them covering the way Stanford takes the air out of the ball. Miami also has found an affinity for making games close as well lately. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. You look at that Louisville loss, obviously they lost that one. Then Florida State getting close. That Florida game kind of got, on the right side of things. South Florida, big talent differential, and then Notre Dame earlier this season. Miami hasn't had some of the opportunities, I think, against some of these ground and pound styles that could really impact, the closeness of the game, kind of the pesky nature. Like South Florida came in with all the acclaim. Florida came in with a really good defense. Florida State, not a good football team. They're just going to lose. They're just going to lose ACC football games at this point until further notice. But Miami, I just don't see Stanford being able to obviously make this close. But a 30-point spread is huge, in my opinion, in a conference game. We'll see how pissed off Miami comes out at Hard Rock. That's 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 Eastern on ESPN. So that'll be a nice cap of the day for you guys in ACC country. Boston College heads to Louisville. Louisville favored by 25.5 points at home, 59 degrees up there. This is one where you could see a letdown in my mind. And Jeff Brom, and we had Alexis Cubitt on earlier this week. The week after taking down that big opponent, that top 10 win for Jeff Brom has been a house of horrors. Now, Boston College, 1-6 overall. Their one win was all the way back to kick off the season against Fordham. They've since lost 42-40 to Michigan State, 30-20 at Stanford, 28-24 against Cal, who it is like the only program to really go west to east, and it seemed like it pan out. 48-7 at Pitt, not even a long trip. 41-10 against Clemson at home, and 38-23 against UConn. That game was so ugly. It is still shocking to me how bad that was for BC. And they could not find a way to finish that one. They basically get blown out in the second half. Here's their second half drive chart. Punt, field goal, punt, turnover on downs. End of the game. UConn at the end of the half was down 20-17. They end up winning 38-23 last week. Now, I'm not here to recap UConn taking down Boston College. What I am here to say is Boston College and their quarterback issues and what is ahead of them right now against Louisville is beside the point here. This is all about Louisville and how they show up. That's where this one, I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. It is a 25.5 point spread. Louisville is at home. All the things tee up for them to have the safest possible exit ramp from that Miami game. This isn't even a trap game. This is how bad BC is, in my opinion. But you've got to show up and be ready to play. And I think Louisville will. I think 25.5 points is large. I think that's a large spread there. And you got Virginia Tech next week. You don't have anything to look ahead to as far as huge challenge here. The question is, do they show up to start the game, start fast, and do all of those things? But Boston College has not been competitive in the ACC in a minute this season. So that is something to very much keep a close eye on there as far as trying to predict this one. You have the one side of it where it is Louisville coming off a big win. They have not been good coming off of big wins, but Boston College has been so sad when it comes to its performance in ACC play. It has been just awful. And last week in an out-of-conference game at home against UConn, you failed to show up in the second half. And Jim Moore made you pay. Jim Moore Jr. So shout out to him for going to Chestnut Hill and getting a win. Boston College, man, if you had to ask me, UConn or BC, I don't know which one. I've got UNC maybe hitting a little bit of a stride against some okay opponents. But Boston College, far and away the worst team in the ACC this year. Really disappointing for a lot of people. A lot of people had BC trending in the right direction. You know, Dylan Lonergan was going to come in and kind of solve a lot of the quarterback issues. They still were able to retain a Grayson James, but it's just not been good. It's not been good. So a busy week 9. That is the game picks and predictions. In just a few minutes, we're going to have Conor O'Neill join us. Really excited about him stopping in to see us as well. Do want to remind you guys about our friends as well. This is a cool thing with holiday planning. already around the corner. Big Game USA, biggameusa.com. Go shop their entire selection of footballs, whether you have a family friend who's in the ACC family, whether you have a family friend who's in another conference or another college football team. Big Game USA can get you all taken care of for your holiday gifts. Use code BEON325. That's BEON, the number 3, the number 2, the number 5 for 10% off your order at Big Game USA. Usually you'll get free shipping as well. So check out their selection of ACC footballs. They've got another page here. So it's not just 6 in the conference. They've got Miami as well. So it even says dime on there. Man, after last week, that is certainly quite the thing to have on the side of the football when you're Carson Beck having the day that he did. But nonetheless, check out our friends, biggameusa.com. They're all official football. So that is the official football maker for all of those schools. Check them out. See if your school has their football there. I do want to say, too, the ACC is having a kind of run of close football games. 13 conference games so far this year have been decided by one score, 8 points or fewer. In week 5, there were 2 conference games that went to OT, making it the first multiple ACC league games that went past regulation in the same week since 2019. So some weird things going on with ACC play already this season. I think we're going to see more of that. The average conference margin of victory is 13, smallest margin among Power 4 conferences. So a competitive league. I know the coaches always hammer that in the league. A competitive league. What they don't need is this league kind of eating itself up. And that's where the conference standings kind of come into play here. And when you look at the race for the ACC championship, it is crowded at the top. We are going to get clarity. We are going to get some of that answered as the coming weeks unfold. But it is nevertheless really intriguing for ACC teams in the top 25, 2 in the top 10, Georgia Tech, Miami in the top 10 of the AP poll, Virginia, Louisville in the top 20 as well. So AP poll, I don't have too many gripes with on what they're doing. They are their own world, and they have biases in their region. They have biases in their team they cover. They're just asked to do a task, and they're not really given really good guidelines to do it. But I would say and argue that a team like Louisville might need to be above Virginia after what they did to Miami. Now, it doesn't mean I would have Louisville over Miami, although I think they're playing at that level, and they just showed it. But when you look at Louisville, they have the talent with Miller Moss at quarterback, at least, to kind of manage it, run the show, do all those things. But Chris Bell emerging the way he has, Isaac Brown being the dude that he is, Colin Lacey, of course, is another really talented player. You have a ton of pieces that make this a very, very dangerous football team when it comes to the ACC championship race. Just one loss to UVA. Now, that's the kicker. That's the kicker. Louisville can't afford another loss. Virginia is in a very precarious spot as well, sitting at 16, but mainly Virginia sitting there with that one loss to NC State. Man, are they kicking themselves for that one earlier this season. But of course, that doesn't count as a conference game. So they're second in the ACC. They're sitting pretty with regards to that. It is one of the weird scheduling things of 2025 when it comes to this big power conference, super conference world we live in. I think it's dumb. I truthfully think you should have probably drawn a line in the sand and said, look, we appreciate it, guys, but this is just going to create conversation around this or that. It's a non-conference game against league opponents. Let's think about that. Just think about that. Try your best to get out of it. If you can't, we'll let it simmer, let it suffice for a game. But to have that in there, really, really tough, because that is a game with 2 ACC opponents. That should make it a conference game. If anything, you should get maybe extra credit for that. I'm just kidding. But Louisville really doesn't have much wiggle room. They need Virginia to lose 2 games. They need Virginia to lose 2 games. I don't see that happening with the schedule that Virginia has. I do think Virginia loses one. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Virginia is able to get past this entire schedule without a loss. At North Carolina, at Cal, against Wake Forest, at Duke. That's the one I'd circle right there. And then bye, and then Virginia Tech at home, of course. When you look at what Duke has, Duke, on the other hand, is probably toast in this conference race still. They lost to Georgia Tech. That is one who also doesn't have a really difficult road the rest of the way in a sense. But you will have this Duke team be really battle-tested going into that game against Virginia, at Clemson, at UConn, and then they go get to host Virginia. That is a big game for Manny Diaz. Big game for Manny Diaz. He's in great shape there. I'm not saying they are in any world going to get rid of him. But, man, you've got to take care of business with Darian Mensah in some of these big games. You've beaten Elon, NC State, Syracuse, and Cal. You've lost to Illinois, Tulane, and Georgia Tech. So you've beaten the teams you really should have, and you've lost to all 3 of the ones that would have been a difficult test. And Duke on a bye this week, good for them, kind of lick their wounds a little bit and reset, just like Clemson. If they don't have a competitive showing against Clemson, that is going to be a huge disappointment with where this is headed with Manny Diaz. Expectations are low at Duke. Obviously, their focus is on basketball, but what they have to show is a little bit of that oomph to them, I think, with the roster they've put together. Nate Shepard running the ball, Darian Mensah at the helm. I would say and argue he's not lived up to what they're paying him. 17-2 TD to INT ratio is great, but he really hasn't pushed them through some of the games that he needed to, particularly last week against Georgia Tech, in a sense. I mean, that's disappointing as all get out with the opportunities that they had to win that football game. So on the road at Clemson, big one for Duke. But, of course, that Virginia one is the one that you've got to kind of circle and say, that's winnable, that's doable. And they need to get that one because then they could finish North Carolina, Wake Forest, and really, in theory, they could be going into a bowl game looking to win 10 games, which would be awesome for Duke. If they lose at Clemson, if they lose to Wake Forest, or excuse me, if they lose to Virginia, I would say you're kind of like, man, that's a tough step back almost for Duke. Going into this year 2, where they invested so much in Darian Mensah. You can't waste really good quarterbacks like Clemson is. Clemson is wasting Cade Klubnik. Obviously, he's hurt. But whatever they're doing, whatever is going on in Clemson, South Carolina, they're wasting his season, and it has been not good there for Clemson. Virginia, that is their only challenge the rest of the way. They do have that challenge of going on the road against North Carolina, and then on the road at Cal, and then the Wake Forest game, which is at home for UVA, comes without a bye off of that West Coast trip. So then Duke, Virginia Tech, I don't see them losing 2, so that makes them in pretty good position for that ACC championship game. And then you've got to figure out, can Georgia Tech get through unscathed? They've played some really close games as well, so something to note there. And then SMU. Boy, if SMU makes it to the ACC championship, talk about earning it. Not that the other teams wouldn't, but Miami next week, you're on the road again this weekend at Wake Forest. Then you got Miami. Then you make another long trip to Boston College. Then you get a bye, and then you get, thankfully, that is a huge bye, by the way, for SMU to have after that Boston College trip. They can kind of just get through there. Then you've got a rest up, and then you get to face Louisville at home on senior day before you got to go all the way out to Cal on Thanksgiving week. No classes, all about you, all about coming out, being ready to go. We know the path that SMU takes will be well-traveled and very, very difficult to navigate the rest of the way. But when it comes to Georgia Tech, on the other hand, they got Syracuse, a team without a quarterback, but one who's going to show up for this one with the history between those two head coaches. Then you go on the road at NC State, kind of a withering, nothing program right now, and then at Boston College, and then Pitt, and then Georgia. So obviously, if you make it to the Georgia game, you're sitting pretty in a sense because you're going to the conference championship game in all likelihood. But it would be huge to obviously have that win over Georgia as well for that good old college football playoff resume for sure. So ACC championship race is very much heating up. I am intrigued to see which team, if a team falls, if they can't get past some of these ones that you would expect them to get past. That is where a team like Miami has tripped up in recent years. They've not been able to get past some of these teams that they've needed wins or they've been supposed to beat and doing all those things. So really intriguing ACC championship race. You want my latest prediction going into week 9? I would say it's going to be a Georgia Tech making it to the conference championship. I am not there picking SMU just yet. I've got to see them beat Miami first. I think the team that showed up at Clemson can absolutely be back in Charlotte. Their road to Charlotte is so difficult. It's a really difficult road. The good thing is they have Miami and they have Louisville at home. This weekend, they go on the road at Wake Forest, a team that is very interesting to try and evaluate. But to talk more about that game against Wake Forest, we are now going to bring in Conor O'Neill. Really excited to join him. Conor, join us this morning. Conor, thanks for the time this morning. A busy week for you. Let's jump into this first, and I'm going to maybe throw a curveball to you. But Duke basketball back on the hardwood in Cameron Indoor, obviously buzz building around the Blue Devils already. What were a couple of your major takeaways on them from earlier this week?
You got to start with Cam Boozer looks every bit the next supernova freshman for Duke. It's going to be an impossible comparison to make to Cooper Flagg because I was on record last year saying Cooper Flagg is the best college basketball player I've ever seen, just from the scope of every way he was able to impact the game. I realized that might fall on some deaf ears, especially in Dallas after last night's game. But Cam Boozer, man, 33 points on 19 shots and 12 rebounds. I think he even had 4 assists. I mean, he has more of a look of Paolo Banchero, where he just looks like a grown man playing against players that are 3 and 4 years older than he is. Just a ready-made body. The other, there's some other things. I thought Duke's second best player was freshman Nicholas Hamenia. I feel a little bit lied to because we got a preseason scrimmage that we got to see in early August, and then Duke does their version of Midnight Madness is called Countdown to Craziness, and they do like a 12-minute inter-squad scrimmage. And both of those times, I did not see the version of Nick Kamenia that we saw against UCF. Like, he was a whirling dervish of rebounds and drawing fouls, and his shot wasn't falling, and he still had 14 points. So it's another Duke team that is pretty much a national championship contender. Their margin for error is nowhere close to as large as it was last year. There are some concerns when they only have one legitimate 5 available to play. And they're still waiting on Malik Brown to be back from his knee surgery. Their guard play gives me a lot of questions, especially at the lead guard position. Like, we don't know if Caleb Foster, if it's going to come together for him or he's going to have a struggling junior year. We don't know if Caden Boozer is going to be a one and done or if he's going to take a little bit of time to grow into the role. And their schedule is not going to let them grow into anything. Like, they play the toughest non-conference schedule I think I've ever seen. So it's another team that they'll be at the top of the ACC. I think I picked them second. I think I picked Louisville number 1. But yeah, we're fired up for basketball here on Tobacco Road.
No doubt about that, and you'll be there to cover it up every step of the way for them on the Duke side of things. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Let's get to SMU, headed over to Wake Forest, a Wake team that probably feeling pretty good about themselves the first year of the Jake Dickert era. You got Damon Claiborne. Let's talk about him right off the bat. SMU's run defense, one of the better ones in the country right now. What they did to Clemson, no yards in the second half on the ground. But this is a different animal. Top 25 in the country in yards per game and I believe yards per carry as well. So a really, really talented back that Wake Forest has there. He's averaging 7.81 yards per carry, which is fourth in the NCAA. He is just dynamic. How do you slow down Damon Claiborne if you're SMU, and what makes him special?
To start with the last part, every time he touches the ball, he's a threat to score. He has game-breaking speed. He has the center of balance that you need as a running back to take hits and keep going forward. Not even sometimes you feel like he gets faster if he gets hit. We saw it coming. He was really good in a limited role as a freshman. He was off and on as a sophomore, and then last year was really his breakout season where he got the full scope of carries. And he had a 1,000-yard season for a 4-8 team. Like, that team was not running the ball that often because they had to throw. They were behind in a lot of games, and he still managed to put up 1,000 yards. This year, I think he's third in the ACC in rushing yards. He's basically played 4.5 games. Their season opener, he played 4 snaps against Kennesaw State because of a ribs injury. And then he got knocked out of the Virginia Tech game at halftime with I think it was a leg or a knee or an ankle or something like that, lower body, if you want to go with the hockey term for it. And he scored a touchdown in overtime against Georgia Tech. He had to come out for the 2-point conversion play that Wake didn't get to win the game. And his left shoulder was like dangling at his side. There's photos from him at the Oregon State game where he's got a big wrap on his left shoulder. Like, he has been banged up throughout the year, and he's still putting up monster performances. He is without a doubt the most important player to Wake's offense. I mean, I think 98% of the time you're saying that that's a quarterback. Damon Claiborne is the most important player to Wake's offense. He is everything that stirs the drink. Getting him going is kind of priority number one. How you stop him, I think it's just throw as many bodies as you can at him, load the box. He's still going to have the chance to break a tackle at the line and get to your second level and break you. But I think that's just kind of the risk you take. You certainly don't want to have a light box against him, because once he gets into the open field and starts churning, he's really tough to bring down.
The quarterback situation. I was going to make everybody wait a little bit for this. Deshaun Purdy, and you've got Robbie Ashford, somebody that a lot of people around the country are familiar with Robbie, but they're two very different quarterbacks, very different styles for this Wake team. What makes them different? And then, of course, explain the quarterback situation on the injury front and kind of what's going on to the listeners out there, if you can.
What makes him different is Robbie's a lot more of a runner. Deshaun, I think, can run. We had offensive coordinator Rob Zell telling us earlier in the week that he doesn't have to change the system and change the plays they call. I'm not saying he's a liar. I think that's just something that offensive coordinators and coaches are just kind of conditioned to tell us at some point. I think the next coach who says, yes, we do have to change our offense based on the quarterback that goes in, that's going to be like the breaking news story. So Robbie's more of a runner. Deshaun Purdy has a electric arm. That thing, I don't know how exactly to quantify or qualify arm talent, but he has it. He makes some throws. He did in fall camp. He did against Oregon State in Wake's last game, where it really you get the sense of, oh yeah, that's why Florida wanted him to be DJ Lagway's insurance policy this year. Now both of them, what they do have in common, they can be a little erratic, even on the short like screen passes or anything underneath. I mean, they still have the ability to throw it at a receiver's ankles or throw it 10 yards over their head. It can get a little weird. Robbie Ashford threw a pick 6 against NC State where he was pressured and threw one to a receiver who was crossing basically at the line of scrimmage, and it was a pick 6 by a 290-pound defensive tackle. They get a little – they misfire more often than you probably like. Robbie missed the Oregon State game, and that was Deshaun Purdy's first start as a deke, with a injury to his right hand. I believe it's a thumb injury. So that was 2 weeks ago. He's been out there practicing this week. Jake Dicker told us early in the week that they'd kind of evaluate it as the week went. They needed to see where he was at. Tonight, obviously, we'll get the injury report here in about 11 hours or so. So we'll see. I kind of expect him to be listed the same way that they listed him. I think it was Virginia Tech. They listed him as questionable in the 2 updates in the 2 days before, and then he was a game time decision when that game day update rolled around. So that's where I would expect him to be. I think they know both of them can win. Obviously, like Deshaun Purdy goes out and throws 4 touchdowns against Oregon State. It's Oregon State. It's a team that's 0-7 and fired their coach, but it's still an FBS program. It's still either a Power 4 or Power 5 or just a Pac-2, whatever you want to call it. And they know Robbie Ashford is a tough kid. He's the performances that he had to get them to where they were against Georgia Tech, to come back in the game against Georgia Tech after he left the game for a few series with an injury. I can say a lot of critical things about Robbie. I can also say that he is one of the toughest players I've ever covered.
Yeah, he's been on a journey, and he seems to have found a great spot there with Jake Dickert at Wake Forest. And, I think for him, having a guy like Chris Barnes as well is a lot of fun. A guy who's playing a team from his home state, Chris Barnes, a former Houston North Shore product, one of the most electric players really in the ACC for sure. How is that dynamic emerged this year in this offense, and just kind of how do they use him across the formation maybe, or do you see him in the backfield at all with his size and things like that?
Yeah, they'll motion him to the backfield. They'll run him on jet sweeps. I think he's got 7 rushing attempts this year, and I don't think many of those are like screen passes that travel 20 yards to the boundary or anything like that. They'll bring him in motion and hand him off on jets and stuff like that. Anything creative that they can do to get the ball in his hands and get him out in space, they want to do it. We had some fun earlier this year. We were asking basically who wins in a foot race between Chris Barnes and Damon Claiborne. And it was early enough in the season. I think we were actually asking Robbie about it, and Robbie gave the slight edge to Damon. Maybe that's an experience thing. Maybe that, it's a senior versus a redshirt freshman. But there's no doubt in my mind next year, Chris Barnes will be the fastest player on Wake's team. It's funny too, because in fall camp, you would have said Carlos Hernandez, the transfer they brought from Washington State, was this team's best slot receiver. Like, it was very clear he was going to be the guy in the slot. And they put him out there in the first couple of weeks, and he had some drops. He had some penalties. He had some MAs. And that coincided with Chris Barnes having a kick return touchdown against NC State. He got loose against Western Carolina for a long touchdown. He just proved to be a little more reliable early on. And Carlos has kind of turned his season around a little bit. He's had some more meaningful catches in the last few games, but Chris Barnes has stayed electric and consistent, and that's kind of the guy that they want to get on the perimeter and get him matched up one-on-one with people so he can make a miss.
Yeah, the efficiency of this Wake defense this year is really something that is impressive. Nick Anderson is obviously a key, for them as well. They've got some good talent up front. Do you think this is like a legit team? Like, are they playing, to your mind, as a legit team, or is this kind of more of a product of the schedule and then kind of playing Georgia Tech really tough? Should have obviously beat them. What's your take on the overall complexion of this team going into the back half or later half of the year?
I think part of it is the schedule. You can't ignore the fact that their last 2 games were against a team that fired its coach and a team that fired its coach the day after playing Wake Forest. So there's no beating around the bush. Hell, Kennesaw State is a lot better than we all thought they would be. I think they're 5-2 now, but they had a 10-9 win in the opener, and we're all saying, "Oh my God, if they can beat Kennesaw State, a team in its first full season of FBS football, 10-9, what is this going to look like?" The thing that I keep harping on is this staff has gotten the team to buy into the identity that they want much faster, at a much more rapid pace than I thought was possible. I thought it would take a year to kind of really bake into this program how physical they would need to be and how tough they would need to be. And we already see it. It's there. They win up front with a offensive line that was cobbled together through the portal, with a defensive line that they had. Their defensive line, like a lot of places, they had to, especially on the offensive line, they had to replace transfers out. Like 4 of their offensive line starters from last year all transferred, and they all transferred to P5s. It's not like they were bad players. Like they're all starting and playing well for new schools. Their defensive line, they all were seniors, so they needed a new defensive line anyway. And they brought in some of these guys that are just they're game wreckers up front. It's really been impressive to see how it's come together so quickly. So there's no illusions of this team reeling off 5 more wins and making a play to go to Charlotte. It's going to be a tough November slate, but I went into the season saying 6 wins and get to a bowl game, get some positive momentum reestablished for a program that was 4-8 the last 2 years. That's a step in the right direction. The way they play makes me think they could take more than a step. Like they could right. Get to 7 or 8 wins. They could get to a bowl that you're kind of happy to go to. Like if it's the Fenway Bowl or the Military Bowl in Annapolis, something like that. Not going to, I don't think Shreveport is in the ACC bowl rotation anymore, but the Shreveport equivalent, they're not going there anymore. And that's a really positive move for this program.
What's your prediction for Saturday? Does Wake pull the slight upset, but do they pull the upset, or does SMU continue to kind of show that they've gotten right since getting back into conference play?
I can't. I think it's SMU. I think Kevin Jennings is a dynamic quarterback. I saw SMU win a game last year that they turned the ball over 6 times, and somehow Duke did not score a point off of those 6
Crazy. That was the craziest game I've seen in person.
I never want to see another team go 6 in the takeaway category and 0 in the points off takeaway category. Like even if it's not a team I cover, like that's just like something cruel. That was a crime against football last year.
Yeah.
But I think SMU is the more complete team. I think their defensive front is going to give Wake's running game a lot of problems, and that's going to make it so that Wake is going to have to throw the ball to win. And I don't know if they've thrown the ball to win a game yet this season, even with Damon Claiborne being banged up some. So I would lean SMU. I do think it's going to be close. The one thing we've learned about this Wake team, like they will fight you tooth and nail. And I think that's going to make for a competitive 4-quarter game.
Let me end on this because I do want to end on a little positive note for your listeners out there on the Wake side of things, you covering them. Jake Dickert, the job he's done as a whole and how he's leading Wake Forest into this new era. One, great hire from what it looks like, early returns. What has he done to kind of maybe change a little bit of the mindset about Wake and just kind of how Wake approaches things, if any, and kind of pushing this program to a program where, okay, maybe they can kind of hang around, not that they haven't this year, but really hang around and sustain long-term a little bit, almost like be at a Duke level of expectations in a sense.
Yeah, well, Dave Clawson had a GM. Dave Clawson's GM was the former wide receivers coach, Kevin Higgins. It seems like Rob Schlager, who is with Jake Dickert, comes from more of the financial movings and dealings that you need with a GM. more than anything, the energy around Wake changed. Dave Clawson did some things at Wake Forest that a lot of people would have thought were impossible in this day and era of college football. And you can't take that away. But this was a program that was kind of down in the dumps the last 2 years. And they went from being ranked in CFP rankings in 2022 to a 4-8 record in the last 2 seasons. They've beaten we talk about SMU's long regular season ACC winning streak. Wake hasn't had a home ACC win since 2023, in the middle of October even. So this is a program that needed an energy shift. It needed kind of a recalibration. Players needed to be excited a little bit more. And that's more than anything what Jake has done for Wake. There's always going to be this perception of Wake that it's the little engine that could. Jake told us last week that he kind of doesn't like that. He told the team, like, should we really be satisfied with everybody patting us on the back for being 4-2? Like, we have 2 losses, even though the Georgia Tech one.
Yeah.
We talk about the offside call and the non-call or whatever. I mean, he certainly does not want Wake to be satisfied with where they are. There's part of me that thinks I'm skeptical of whether Wake can ever be a 10-win team year after year after year after year. I don't know if that can be accomplished, but I do know Jake is going to fight like hell to do it. And then kind of that's a good mentality for Wake to have, even if it feels like it's an impossible fight.
Conor O'Neill doing it all for us on on3rivals.com. We appreciate all your time this morning. Devils Illustrated is where you could find his work on Duke. And, of course, you'll be covering the Demon Deacons this weekend as they take on SMU at 11 a.m. Central Time, noon over there on the CW. Deacons Illustrated is where you can find his Wake Forest coverage. Conor, have a great rest of your Thursday, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes. Conor O'Neill stopping by with us on All Access AM. We appreciate him stopping by and kicking off the day. When you kick off your next game day, make sure you have Horn Legend on. That is one of our new sponsors. We're really appreciative of them for for joining us on All Access AM and trusting us to help get the word out to ACC schools that Horn Legend is your stop for all the polos, pullovers, quarter zips, sports shirts, and more. They've got an incredible selection, but also, I mean, this is not a school-specific one. This is just a really, really cool polo that I got a while ago. And so I've always enjoyed the Horn Legend brand and really want to make sure that you guys click the link in our podcast episode description or on our YouTube channel description and check them out. Hornlegend.com, though, if you don't want to click for us, you can just go right to Horn Legend. This has been All Access AM. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We got some game picks out of the way, broke down every week 9 game for you guys, and had Conor O'Neill join us. Might try to sneak in a little basketball next week. Maybe a couple quick guests join us, working on a couple big ones for next week. So ACC basketball and college basketball as a whole is upon us. So we'll try to fit some of that in as football season still reigns supreme for just a little bit longer, depending on what school you follow. Whatever school you follow, make sure you hit the subscribe button for All Access AM. Please support us. Check us out. Our YouTube channel, All Access AM. You can see the replays of the show. I chop up some videos, so if you don't want to watch the whole show, I try to give you guys the key points, but please hit that subscribe button. It helps us a lot. Tell your friends, tell your family, ACC fans, check us out, All Access AM. Hope you guys have a great weekend watching another round of college football. Appreciate you guys listening to this Thursday edition of All Access AM. We'll catch you guys on Monday, 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern. We'll go for an hour recapping week 9. We'll see what craziness happens this weekend. Thanks for joining us. I'm Billy Embody. We'll catch you next time.